And welcome back, everybody. This is, as always, the Refresh Point. My name is Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my constant co-host, Steve.
Hey, Ben. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I drove through the wonderful, amazing DFW, Arlington area traffic, and it was just a great time, as you know.
It's part of the quintessential North Texas experience. Just tripped over that.
Absolutely, just the smoothest ride. Truly, no traffic whatsoever. No,
Very pleasant.
Very pleasant. But this is the Refresh Point. We talk about Weiss in many forms. We talk about the meta, upcoming set releases, deck changes, deck upgrades, and just cool cards and other fun topics. Springfest has begun in earnest, with the Canadians being the first to play each other in the team's format, and shortly after this episode drops, players in California and Georgia will get their taste of the team's format as well, with the super, super long overdue power-up sets coming in hot. And finally today, a discussion of the finest of flavors to taste in our first old versus new, to finish off today's discussion. So, shuffle your decks, tap or cut. We'll dive right into the Refresh Point with some breaking news. It's power-up time.
All right, we're going to get powered up for the first time in English. And as the old saying goes, better late than never.
Better late than never, sure.
So if you are a Log Horizon Kill la Kill Haruhi enthusiast, what a great time to be alive.
What a great... Yeah. They're not, it definitely helps. And that's not a false statement. But, it's about 5 years too late for a reason.
I think it's definitely more too late for some sets than others.
Yeah.
So let's dig into the power-up sets just a little bit.
To indulge one of our local players, the Good Doctor. Haruhi did get its power-up set, and it got a lot.
So, of the power-up sets, it's my opinion that Haruhi benefits the most in terms of what they had versus what they gain versus what the total package looks like at the end. There's an early play in all of the power-ups, but the Haruhi one is the only one that heals.
Yeah.
They get the best of the advantage engines that were added in the power-up sets.
On reverse salvage.
Yes.
We take what we can get here.
Right. And with a good climax trigger.
Yeah.
Then we have...
Door and Stock Sold is workable.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a pairing that isn't bad. And then some very nice milling mechanics where you can get that deck speed.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at Emo Swing.
Emo Swing. The Fated World.
Yes. So
my favorite advantage card.
This card is just now getting unrestricted in Japan. Nearly a decade after it was released. It's very, very strong. And
Salvage 2! 3-inch!
Pay 1 to Salvage 2 is never overrated.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a testament to the strength of the event that it stayed restricted for so long after, not only after it was printed, but after Haruhi kind of left competitive space.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in Japan has been doing anything with Haruhi for a very long time, except for extreme Haruhi enthusiasts. That every set has those. But yeah, I think if you were interested in prolonging the, pushing it, if we're making a tier list and we want to push a set up and we want to rank them differently after the power up set, then the set that gets the most push is Haruhi.
So Haruhi's up. And you also, we haven't mentioned, but if you're a great fan of anti-fun mechanics and telling your opponent no, there's now 2 ways, 2 different cards to deny their climax on their turn. Kadir's Mikaru, 3-2. You play it, you pay an extra 1, your opponent can't play climaxes on the next turn. Congrats. Also, -1 soul, just for fun. And then a 2-0 counter event. It's in blue. So, and obviously it's not an SOS Brigade card. So, the traits are a little bit funky, as is always with Weiss sets, but hear me out. Play the event. Your climax that you just played is now gone.
Yeah. It's a huge disruption if you don't know that it's coming.
Yeah.
And we discussed it a little bit last week during our Dark Horse discussion, where we talked about the types of decks that can be extremely disruptive in this team's format. And that is one of them, where it can kind of come from left field, and when it hits, you just get blown out. And if you need to come back into the game using climaxes, you can't.
Good
so
luck.
You can look forward to seeing more Haruhi possibly in your locals. If you have a person who's already a Haruhi enthusiast, as we do, that person will be very happy to tromp on you.
You have two. There was somebody else that played it last night at our locals as well. So I fought him. It was great.
Yeah.
I didn't play climaxes. I was not allowed to play climaxes for 4 turns. Besides the fact that I didn't draw into any of that.
Joke's on you. I didn't have any anyway.
Yeah. But it will be here, and it's not a completely unplayable deck.
No.
You can see it at Springfest, for sure.
Yeah,
after
absolutely.
this point. And now, so these next 2 power-up sets, I'm not as familiar with, because I'm not an old Weiss, and I don't have a local Lock Horizon or Kill la Kill enthusiast just jamming the deck down my throat.
Right.
So let me in. What does Kill la Kill get?
So I played Kill la Kill when it was released, and it definitely had some clunkiness to it, and the biggest clunky parts were how you gained advantage. Basically, you didn't have any true advantage engine at 1. Your advantage was being big, and then having a 1/1 3500 power event counter that you would use to bully your opponent. So part of what is good about this power-up set is we're adding a workable advantage engine to this thing. But part of what makes Kill la Kill difficult to pilot and unique in many ways, very flavorful, is that it has a marker engine to it. Many cards gain markers from specific other cards or put specific other cards under them as markers. Particularly the relationship between the protagonist, Ryuko, and her living clothing Senkets. So there are a lot of cards that put markers on you, juggle markers around, and there's cards that advantage those markers. So for example, one of the cards in the power-up set is a pay 1, tap 2, and lets you check 4 if you have a marker.
Right.
So that type of mechanic is very useful. It's like Brainstorm, but it always hits. So there's that. We have this marker engine, and we also have a new 1-0 advantage engine, where it's similar to Haruhi, similar power, it's on reverse salvage, and similar power, it gets power from markers, so it's a base 2000 power, and then it gets a huge chunk of power from its marker, so if the marker doesn't hit, then you're in bad shape. But it's on reverse salvage, it's better than anything you had before, which is nothing, just being big, and the set has a little bit to offer now. It's annoying to face. It has anti-heal, which nobody really likes dealing with. And the finisher is not climax driven. It gets markers. And then it burns, and then it burns for the number of markers.
I see.
So it's 1 times markers.
Oh.
So it has some awkward ways to gain markers. And they added an additional new way for it to gain markers that's a bit less awkward. But there is a deck there. It's not the greatest thing ever, but it doesn't rely on climaxes for its finisher. And it has 2 different off finishers that are non-climax related. One is a Musashi and one is the marker finisher. So it has 2 different pieces that it can kind of juggle at the end game to try and bully you a little bit, and it can keep all of its climaxes in the deck, which is not really common in Weiss anymore. It's very much a climax-driven game, and this deck, at its end game, doesn't really need them.
Sounds great for the anti-Haruhi matchup.
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, yeah, if you want to bully somebody else, your friend playing Haruhi perhaps, then this might be a good way to do it.
Right.
And then we can talk a little bit about Log Horizon. This is probably the deck that has the most awkward setup, but the best one of the better outcomes in the end game.
Okay.
So what do we get? We had a horrible advantage engine before, and now we get a slightly better one.
Oh, okay.
Which is
a little bit.
Yeah, it's on attack draw, which it's reveal and draw. So
great.
on a 6K if you have a full field, which is fine. It's
what climax is it on? Is it also on Stock Soul?
It's on Book.
It's on Book. Hey, Book's a plussing trigger.
So that's fine, probably.
Sounds like a JoJo's card, except that it's on Book instead of pants.
Yeah.
But it
actually might be on pants now that I think about it. They get a plussing brainstorm, which is welcome. Their old brainstorm setups were a plussing brainstorm that selects.
Mm-hmm.
Their previous brainstorm was vanilla draw, and old brainstorm 4s that do vanilla draw are not great.
Not amazing, that's for sure.
So that's nice, and the end game is still very, very annoying to face. So how their end game sets up is it's based around a 3/2 support character, and the support character will not let you burn.
Oh.
It's a back row character that says you can't take auto damage.
Hype.
And
you take those?
On top of that, it has a mechanism to lower your souls.
Oh.
And on top of that, there's a level 3 that is a 500 for each that has bodyguard. So the setup typically is you want the Shiro with anti-damage in the back, and then you want...
Oh, was it a 3?
It's a 3, yes.
Okay.
And you want the Naotsugu in front of him, and you want to just absolutely choke the life out of your opponent by using the bodyguard and minus souls combination to force them to run directly into the minus souls.
And another climaxless endgame.
Right. Well, except
Sort of.
for we have Lord's Ninja Akatsuki, which is how we actually win the game, by damaging our opponent to death.
Right.
And you get you can change into it, so we can go to it at level 2 and start using it if we want. And we get a very mid effect of burn 1 on reverse, which is fine.
It gets big. It gets 4K.
Yeah.
It's going to be...
So it's going to get the reverse. Like, that's not going to be the problem.
Right.
The problem is that that's not a lot of damage. So...
It is on door.
It's on door.
So you have pants door.
Pants door...
Correction. The level 1 comment is on pants.
It is on pants. I misspoke when I thought it was on... I was coping harder than I should have when I said book.
Yeah.
But
pants is a nice trigger.
Pants door, so we have something here. We have a game plan. And not an unreasonable one given the current meta. If you can't take auto damage and you're ahead, it's hard to catch up with vanillas. Especially if your vanillas are rolling into minus souls. Mm-hmm. So if they get their full setup... Right. Because it takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
We need a level 3 support, and then we need a level 3 guy, and then we need a full board, and then we need counters, and then we need all of this stuff to support this, hold this guy up, this tank up, and make him tank everything that our opponent is throwing at us. And then we have to pay even more to pay for the finisher to try and finish them off. So, stock is a real concern. Yes. So, but if the game goes well, you have some trickiness to offer. So, we'll see. Maybe it's better than we're giving it credit. But
we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's very workable in a casual sense.
Yeah. And a small disclaimer before we hop into the spike corner. We're not really saying that any of these are that much better in a competitive place in the meta. Like, if we looked at a tier, if we looked at tiers and we went tier, like tiers 0 through 5, they went from, 5 to 3, maybe.
Yeah, I think that, Haruhi...
They've become more playable.
Haruhi goes up 2, everybody else goes up 1.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's one of those things where if you wanted to play those sets before and couldn't, because they were so awful, they were lacking in basic mechanics that we're used to in Weiss. And so we're talking about very old sets that were lacking in even the most basic mechanics like early plays or brainstorms that do anything or advantage engines that do anything.
Yeah.
So we're getting a big step up in terms of playability, but there are still heavy restrictions in sense of your zeros are going to be very mediocre. Your power levels are going to be somewhat questionable, and your end games are also going to be somewhat questionable. So take it with a grain of salt. If you love these sets, go get the power up set and feel the grasp the power of real Weiss cards in your favorite set.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to scout the meta, I would not be too concerned.
Speaking of the meta, it's time for the Spike Corner. It's time to try hard a little bit. Ontario happened. Springfest Ontario's just occurred, and wouldn't you know it, the top team was a Nino list, an Escanor list, and a third list. It happened to be Kaguya.
What's crazy is how good we were at predicting exactly what would win the event. It's not shocking at all. The biggest takeaway I had from the top 4, and congratulations to everybody who made top 4. I think some people in our community will down talk team play as more casual or less competitive than the fall circuit, but it's difficult to make cuts in any tournament. It's difficult to win any tournament. So if you did well at BSF or Ontario or any of the Springfests that are coming up, congratulations to you. Those successes are not easy.
Speaking of which, there's some spicy lists in the rest of the 4. The top team, sure. Nino, Escanor, Kaguya, whatever. In the next 3 lists, there's 3 AOT lists. There is a Quinn's Exodia gamer coming out here, summoning Exodia to obliterate the redheads, coming in hot. And a Paichin dual laners, Tokyo Revengers list, as well as many VTuber favorites.
Yeah, we see a lot of Hololive, which we kind of expected, right? We have Kanata Marine consistently not winning. And I don't mean to bully that deck, but it certainly seems to have a knack for not being able to get the job done right at the end. So we have 2 Kanata Marine lists, 1 in 3rd and 1 in 4th. And what is striking about this is how many 8 Pants AOT lists are.
It's Ryan time. Look. I told you I thought it was good, and it did win 2 European regionals in the fall.
Yeah,
it is a deck with reach.
It's a deck where you have a tremendous finisher. I think if you've never faced this finisher, you will be shocked at how quickly you can die because the check 9 and shuffle in, you don't actually lose the cards in many of the mill type finishers. The cards go into the waiting room, and so you put yourself in more danger trying to finish. With the with this finisher, with the Armor Titan finisher, the cards go back into the deck. So you're highly incentivized to get that bad boy nice and compressed, because what you're going to do is drop a machine gun's worth of damage onto your opponent and then cancel everything if they don't die.
It is easier than you might think to set this up in a way that will kill your opponent. Like, even if you're not the most compressed, let's say there's 2 in there. You're hitting for 9 off the top deck, you could probably hit 1. And that means 1 twice. If you can do this twice, that means 1 4 times, and then 3 other swings.
So, what we want is 2 to 3 reveals. We want that middle ground of damage. Because in most situations, your opponent's going to be 2-6, 3-0, 3-1, something like this. And we want to have something we can reel with, because the more reels we can get, the easier it is for our burns to finish them off. So if you're burning 2 or burning 3 twice and then attacking, you probably can't triple this thing unless the game is going super duper well.
It has to go very well. This is very expensive. It's like a
pay 2, drop 2.
Pay 2, drop 1.
Pay 2,
which
drop
is
1.
still expensive.
Yes.
It's very expensive.
Because it's on attack?
It is on attack.
So that means to triple, we would need a lot of stock.
Like 10.
9, right?
Yeah, 9 or 10 stock, something like that.
So that's too much to reliably triple, unless you're already winning the game anyway, in which case, I mean...
But hear me out. Double with, like, reveal 2 climaxes on each time means 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3.
Yeah, and that's 7 packets or more is starting to reach into the danger zone of what is going to... I mean, Marine, how many games have you lost to Marine? And it's 6 packets, that's all it is. It's 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, that's it. And this guy will put out 7 packets probably every single game. 2 of them is nearly guaranteed. And so that's a lot of damage. And if it's the right size packets, it can be very, very awkward to try and defend against. So, you know, we see 2 of those type of lists in the top 4.
And an 8-door list.
Yeah, 8-door AOT feels very honest. That's the Sasha finisher. So that finisher is surprisingly cheap because of the way that the attacks go down. You get lots of attacks in between when you need to be paying.
I think it's like, you probably will end up with like 5 or 6 attacks and maybe 1 icy tail.
Right, and so the icy tail is the questionable part. 6 attacks is probably going to happen most of the time. It's like, how many icy tails are going to get worked in there? Who knows? Depends on your resources. But the 8-door list, pretty honest deck, very similar to the door choice list, where it's gonna struggle against real, like, good compression. If you're set up to block auto attacks, you know, most of those attacks are gonna be 3 and a trigger, or 2 and a trigger. So if you're set up pretty well, it's defensible, but it can easily kill you. And the door package at level 1 is well known and well accepted. We all love it. We love deck speed and checking for and gearing and all this sort of stuff.
Mikasa's the homie. Love
Yeah.
Mikasa.
So that's not too surprising. It's a little surprising. The Tokyo Revengers list that was part of the team that got 4th place is a bit shocking because it's trying to combine 2 of their...
No, this is the adaptation.
Right.
This is the adaptation, combining both the dual laners into Pai-Chen.
Okay, so yeah. I'm not super familiar with Tokyo Revengers. I have seen the Pai-Chen engine a little bit, but not in a ridiculous way. So here's the setup. We all know and love dual laners to some degree. You know, get out 2 guys, generate infinite amount of stock, you know, set up for Mikey at the end of the game, win. But now, we've got a new mid-game. And in Japan, it feels a lot nicer because Japan just runs... it just runs 8 empty door. Now, that's the most Japan thing that could be done in Weiss.
Now, unfortunately, English does not have a Shioko door promo. So you cannot run door, or you can't run 8 of them. I think you just can't run any of them. I think there's just no doors printed in Tokyo Revengers vanilla.
Wow. That's unfortunate.
But instead, we've combined our two game plans of Dual Laners and Paichin to bully our way into Mikey. So Dual Laners, you have the two 1-0s. They're like a 6-5, 6k, and when they attack, you'll just jam your stock fully clean, and then you'll just leave the turn with somewhere around 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 stock. The Paichin setup is similar to the incoming Alice setup.
Right. We have to brainstorm into it.
We gotta brainstorm into it. Paichin is an 8-5 vanilla. Just vanilla. The guy that poops him out, the brainstormer, also
it gives him like a ridiculous amount of power, like 4,000 power.
It gives him 2,000. It does give him 4,000.
Yeah.
So the game plan is to play the brainstormer, shuffle back in your Paichins, play 2 brainstormers because we don't need anything else.
Right.
And then your Paichins are now just casually 16-5.
Very easy to reverse. Happens all the time.
And hear me out. If you need stock to go through your deck and brainstorm out these Paichins, I hear there's these 2 guys. Some Dual Laners that can generate stock.
So, the risk of this deck is you kind of need things to go a little bit slowly at 1 in order to get the maximum choke. But even at 2, 16-5 is nigh unreversible in a modern...
Absolutely wild. You are sacrificing your regular brainstormer,
right.
I will say for this. But, if you're just going to game, just choke him out. Just have 16-5 board. Why not?
2 16-5s probably means you'll never need to clock again. Because the chance of anybody ever killing either of those dudes is like 0. I mean, if you bombed it, right?
Yeah.
If they were level 1 and you bombed it off the board, then maybe you could get rid of 1. But it's similar to the Alice problem, where if it comes down at 1, it's super difficult to negotiate. And so it pairs really well with this sort of setup because you just want to generate money for your end game. And you don't particularly care where it comes from as long as you get it. So the finisher is pretty standard. Baji Mikey going to McDonald's.
Baji Mikey, Mitsuwa on the side, you have an extra money, just burn some more, and then we go to McDonald's.
Right. So the setup is mostly the same. It's just getting the Paichin package into it. So great. That's another adaptation for a deck that is probably got more problematic matchups in solo play, but in team play,
it's the X factor.
That's right. It's the type of deck that you do not want to face if you do not have good answers for it.
And the final funny list here, Quint's Exodia. Exodia Obliterate! We're coming on in. We it's one of the more flavorful ones here for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe the most flavorful.
Gather up the harem.
So
gather up the harem of girls and then combo off and hope it works.
I'm certain that most people if you have a local environment, you've been exposed to this set. It's too big and too popular and too meta to where you have no clue what quintessential quintuplets is. If you're playing Weiss in any competitive sense, you've seen this set in some permutation before. But it is probably likely that you have not seen this sort of permutation before.
The forbidden one.
Right. Because this is a extremely risky, extremely awkward set of cards to pull off. So let's talk about it.
Maybe not really great payoff at all. But here's the setup. You have a 0. All right. He's MC, protagonist, the homie, Futaru Usugi, or however you pronounce it. I don't watch the show. Hexproof 0, you're going to need that. You rest him. You can give a guy 1,000, and then you can salvage one of the pieces of the Exodia from the waiting room and marker it. Now then, the combo is that you play the bar. You pay 4. You kill 4 other characters on your stage. And then you get the 5 pieces of Exodia out onto the board. However, you'll actually need 5 stock to pull off the full finisher, which we'll discuss now. So, you need 5 stock because you also want to get off this piece. This piece is, they're all called Irreplaceable Bond, the name of the quintuplet. Irreplaceable Bond Nino heals when it's played, and you get to pay 3 to give everybody on damage stick burn 1, which is not amazing. It's like a win more sort of thing.
It's one of those things where if it starts to go bad for your opponent, it's going to get even worse.
Exactly. But you also need the money because the real kind of like the at least extra damage pushing that you're going to guaranteed have is Irreplaceable Bond Itsuki. Also heals when played from the Hexproof 0.
Yeah, you get all their on-play effects.
You get all their on-play effects. It's on reverse, pay 4 to restand, check your top 2, and then you get to swing again. But because of the cost of pay 4 and you want to pay 3 for the other guy to win more, smile, you actually need 5 stock going into this turn. You might think, well, wait, where'd the other stock come from? You have a back row. The back row is Yotsuba and Miku, respectively. Miku gives 2,500 to the people in front and also heals. Yotsuba gives 1,500 to all of them. Yotsuba is also Fumio at home. Forced, by the way. So it blind stocks 2, and then your opponent chooses a climax, shuffles everything else from their waiting room back into their deck.
So the timing of that can be useful. It's probable that if your opponent has already gone to 3 and has wailed out on whatever their finisher is, and you're still alive, that this will be the mechanism that helps kill them. Because if you've blown all your money, then it's likely that your waiting room will be heavy with damage cards, and just heavy in general. So getting those all shuffled back in, very nice. 2 blind stock, extremely nice, because we have 2 expensive things to pay for. After we've put them all on the board, we have a restand to pay for, we have this burn thing to pay for, so we need that free cash.
Yes, and Miku gives somebody 2,500, so you can guarantee your restand, essentially, because now it's going to be 10k, plus the 1k from the bar, plus the 1.5 from Yotsuba, plus the 2.5 from Miku, plus another 2.5 from Miku.
Right.
So, we're swinging at like 7k, you're going to die. Hopefully. And also puts another blind stock. And so, in essence, this replaces 3 stock.
Right. So your burn 1, burn 1, burn 1 is essentially free, and you need one
more stock to get then the restander at the end.
Correct.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's how the math works. That's paying for all of that good stuff. What do we get from Ichiga?
Ichiga says, all right, also heal. So you're going to heal down 4 by the end of this.
Massive heal.
Or 5. 4 or 5. And pick up your opponent's board, put it into memory, put it back however you please.
So that's pretty nice if your opponent is attempting to employ some kind of minus souls endgame or some kind of bodyguard, something tricky that, or if they have counters, you can grab their low-level back row characters so you can side attack. That mechanic will generate tons and tons of value almost regardless of how your opponent has decided to employ the game.
Also gives another 2k. So in case your 17k now Itsuki was not big enough, it can now be 19.
Right. So we heal down 4. We get a bunch of miscellaneous effects that ultimately are turning into 3 attacks and then possibly 3 burn 1s and then a 4th attack if we can afford it.
Yes.
So,
well, I mean, it's the quintessential quintuplets. You need 5 stock going into this turn. Come on, man. Haven't you been listening, man?
The flavor is inescapable in all ways. So there is something here to offer. It's got a lot of potential to cause random damage to your opponent. And in many varieties of ways. If they were counting on not getting reversed, well, that's not happening. If they were counting on anti-souls or anti-level count or anti-damage counters, that's probably not happening. If they were counting on having a deck that was highly compressed, that's probably not happening. So there is some stuff to like here. I don't think that it's unreasonable if you manage to get all of this together, that I don't think this is, an unreasonable set of mechanics. That being said, how often are we going to be able to pull this off?
You need to hit the ground from turn 0. Your ideal turn 0, you're ditching one of these 3-2s. Obviously, there's 5 of them. 5 3-2s. So, total, there are, There's like 11 total copies in the list that's being run at this Toronto Spring Fest. And ideally, what you're going to do on your turn 1 is you're going to discard one of these from your opening hand so that you can draw into the 0
Yeah, we
at
have
the
to
beginning.
mulligan aggressively for this 0, because we got to get that going ASAP.
We need the 0 immediately, we need the finishers immediately, and we need to marker every single turn.
And what's kind of startling about this list is this list is available on the from Bushiroad, and we'll go ahead and post the list on our YouTube link whenever we upload this episode.
Yeah.
But what's startling about this list is how few 4-ofs there are. There's only like 2 in the whole deck. One is obviously our boy, who we definitely run 4 of because we gotta get him as fast as possible. The other one, of course, being the absolutely overpowered quintessential quintuplet door advantage engine.
Yes.
Which, if you have been playing any competitive quintuplets, you're familiar with this advantage engine. It's extremely strong and works very well in these sort of contexts because we need to get as many cards in hand as we can possibly have, and this will get the job done.
And so, all of these 2-ofs and 1-ofs or this isn't actually a 1-of, this is like a foil of this.
Right.
But, all of these 2-ofs and 1-ofs, for the most part, are just ways to ditch hand for something else, anything else, because we've got these, all these 3-2s running around our list, clogging up our hand, causing trouble. We need to get rid of them. Cowgirl, the worst timing Itsuki Nakano is here. We're actually playing the Nino, that discards a Nino to draw and discards to salvage.
Right.
You'll probably get high value, honestly, just because of all the 3s you're running. But for the most part, you just need to ditch these 3-2s from your hand for value.
Right.
And
we have every ditch outlet that could possibly be run to do it.
And there's a Climax swapper that mills 3. So, we have some extra deck speed. We're going to swap our bars into doors. In the very end game, maybe the door into bar. And, get the 3-2s in the waiting room to marker every turn. And you have to last until at least turn 5. Because you can marker and do the combo on the same turn.
Right.
So, you have to last at least until turn 5. And you have to marker every single turn. One of these 5. You can technically, let me double check. One of them, okay. You can't do a card of the same name.
Right.
So
we can't. It wouldn't make any sense.
It wouldn't make any sense. You gotta have one of each of the 5. So you have to basically go in order. There's 3 of the red 3-2 piece, Ichika, because you also want the experience for your door combos, so it's an ideal level target.
Right, and it's red, so we need, we have to play the rest of the game first.
Yes.
That's kind of the deal here, is that we need to survive the mid-game so that we can actually execute at the end game. So there's a lot of tricky pieces to this. The amount of memory tracking that you probably have to do in a deck like this is extremely high. You have to remember where your 3s go. If you trigger the wrong ones at the wrong time and they go into stock, you have to get them paid out. So this is the type of deck that if you are very good at memory tracking, if you are very good at following where the cards are going, then this is the type of deck that you can really employ. But I do question whether the payoff for all the effort that you put into this thing is greater than the payoff from 8 Standby Nino or the payoff from 8 Door Itsuki. Obviously, this is a great result. So this is the type of thing that shows up in Springfest. That's just how it is.
It can work. It can do work. And
Absolutely.
The mid-game is propped up by a promo. I believe it was either a title cup promo or an entry promo of some sort. It's a 2/1 2-bomb that lets you discard to salvage a character on play. So
it's a ditch, it's a pickup, it's a way to push something troubling off the board. There's a lot of answers built into this deck.
Yeah.
And you can peruse the deck list for yourself to go through exactly how it decides to play its mid game, but it's very much a toolbox full of tools, and you have to be very smart about which ones you pick up because you're not going to be able to have them all. So props to whoever.
Props to them. Props to this homie. He understood the point of quintessential quintuplets, that you have to date all 5. Smile.
Absolutely.
And speaking of flavor, it's time for old versus new. You know, there's been a lot of changes between the long history of Weiss, between all of its old and new mechanics. Fitting, then, we should talk about the power-up set here today, and also the new flavor coming in from Quints Exodia. So let's talk about flavor. Let's talk about, you know, how it's changed over time, because I feel like a lot of the times now, especially in modern sets, flavor has become associated with worse to some degree. Like, a lot of the times, there are, like, flavor cards that are just like, ha, that makes sense, but also completely unplayable. I'd never use this.
That's the thing we can talk about with regards to Weiss. One of the things that's strange about playing a game for so long is that the game has become very different. And anybody who started playing Weiss many years ago, if you started when English started like I did, the game has become much different. But the flavor from before was a bit easier to pick up on because it was an anime card game. And what I mean by that is the mechanics of the game were still being discovered and refined by Bushiroad. So they didn't have a very good idea about how cards should behave and what would be good and what would be distinctly not good. So part of that is expressed in traits. Part of it is expressed in your events. Events in old Weiss used to be bonkers. Now we get very tame events where they salvage or they...
You can't get emo swing for every set.
Right. But, like, for example, Persona 3 had an event that makes you take damage repeatedly until you level up, and it's called Level Up.
Oh, for you?
Yes. You level up. The same set, which is one of the oldest sets in Weiss, had an event called Shuffle Time.
Yeah.
Where you just turn all your opponent's cards face down, mix them up randomly, put them into position, and then turn them face up. It's the type of thing...
Yeah, because it's the shuffle type of the game,
Correct.
Yeah.
Highly flavorful, also extremely useless. Because it costs you resources to make these sort of maneuvers.
Yeah.
And it's questionable what value they provide.
Hey, you'll just move up their brainstormer randomly.
Right. It's like sometimes it'll work. But sometimes it's just the front row mixed up a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's... When people talk about... And there was a discussion on the global group about whether the flavor of the game had been reduced or whether it was still there or whether the game still has anime flavor. And I would argue that it does. But the difference is that the flavor now is more useful. We took what was flavorful about a set and we incorporated better mechanics.
Normal mechanics.
Right.
Fine.
And as the game has matured, it's gone from being an anime card game to a card game with anime, if that makes sense. I'll explain further. When the game was old, they didn't have a good idea about how to make a card game, but what they did know is anime. So they jammed all these anime-style mechanics into it, thinking it'll just go. Because I think originally they didn't have designs on the game being as competitive as it's become. But as the game matured, we started to get real mechanics. We're figuring out what's good, what's not good, what balances the game, what makes the game fun and interactive, what makes the game competitive. So with that lens, we need to tailor our flavor for that. And it's been happening the whole time. If you if you are new to Weiss, you may feel like it's less or it's more, but it's always been there, and we can talk about some examples. So when we talk about older cards that have flavor, I already mentioned some very old events that were very strange and flavorful, but even then, we're talking about older cards that were still mechanically refined. Like, I always think about omnidirectional mobility gear whenever I think about flavor.
Yep.
Because that was a card that was jammed directly down my throat for years in the meta. So you got very familiar with this card. I have never watched one episode of Attack on Titan, but I know exactly what this does.
Yeah.
So in the anime, it's the grappling hook that they use to go back and forth and fight the Titans. So in the game, how does it behave? Exactly like you would think it would behave. You grapple all over the place. You can go here, you can go there, you can go everywhere, and you get to get this little
surge and
you get a
dish.
little hand refinement, so it's mechanically useful in many ways. So that's a great example. Another great example is so if you've watched Sword Art Online, and I've watched a lot of Sword Art Online, you in the show they have this concept where one character sets up another character, and the way that they identify that the character is going to be set up, there's a setup character, so the setup character sets up, like, parries the monster into a specific position, and then they say switch, and then the character who's been being passive goes forward and they're aggressive.
Right.
So Kirito and Asuna, they have their switch, right? But even later on, there's other characters who do switch. And so the switch idea, they've had several iterations of cards that have embodied the switch idea. There's the attack in waves combo for Kirito and Asuna, where they switch places with each other. That's, on the field, and it's actual physical, like, switching, one starts, then it goes to the back, and then the other one comes forward. And so you have this cool switch mechanic. There's an event in the Ordinal Scale set that is a switch event, effectively. And even in the new set, you have Mito and Asuna doing the switch finisher. So you do have flavor in the game that's from a while ago. But we have flavor in the game for new stuff, too.
Yeah.
So, give me some new flavor.
And it's like, it's just not great, but it is there. Now, I only know a few sets very deeply because I own them, and I was like, I want to make this work, and I read every single card, and I, like, cried when I realized half of it was garbage. But it also means I remember a lot of this flavor very well. My Kobayashi waifu, Elma, has a flavor in the Kobayashi set where you can run 8 events. It's called Unlimited Appetite. It's her eating a piece of bread. It's the bread event. She has an unlimited appetite. You can play it, you get the console off the top, so you're just eating more and more. You just keep on eating. And you have to have an Elma to play it. And there's a 1-0 where you can marker it underneath her to get power, so you keep eating to get more power. And then there's your finisher, which is burn 1, but you can also marker the event under this 3-2. And so for every event, it gets 1k for every copy on the board. So if you have 3 copies of the Elma finisher, and you have 6 events total, like 2 under each, there's 16ks. 16 5s if you have the assist that you're probably going to run because it's, you trigger a climax, you can discard a climax to salvage.
So it's just absolutely huge.
Yeah.
From eating.
Because she has an unlimited appetite. And it's just not the best, but it's there.
I think that's one thing that's been true about some of the flavor of Weiss is that some of it has been mechanically useful, some of it has been less mechanically useful.
Yeah. And on the mechanically useless, for the most part, flavor, there are, like, trait flavor cards.
Yes.
Some examples that came to my mind just randomly. In Fate Camelot, there's a King Arthur 0 where you get a marker and it gets the gift trait. Because she's gifting.
Yeah, there's
the power.
There's tons of traits like that. There's a Sasha from Attack on Titan that gives meat.
Meat.
And so it's one of those things
There's
where...
an Abakio from JoJo's that gives T and -1,000 to your opponent's character.
Right. So those are all great examples of maybe not the strongest cards, but definitely high on the flavor aspect of cards. Traits are one of the flavor pieces that are sometimes overlooked, sometimes the set really keys off of it. Yeah. And I think that if you've played any Fate, there's a good chance that you have at some point had to tangle with
Master Servant, baby.
Yes.
Gotta deal with it.
Master Servant, or if in the case of very old Fate, Royalty.
Yeah. And, there is one more trait flavor card that I want to pull up just to read off all of the different traits that it gets in Slime. There is a trial deck card, if I can get it to load here. There was a trial deck card where it would transform into the trial deck 1 combo. And, yes, here we go. You can pay 1, put it to memory when it gets reversed, choose a 1 combo in the waiting room from the trial deck, and it gets stab resistance, physical attack resistance, pain nullification, thermal fluctuation resistance, electric current resistance, paralysis resistance, predator, and great sage until the end of turn, because it's literally the main character dying and being isekai'd into the world.
And just gets everything.
Yeah.
What's funny about that card is there is a card in King of Fighters that that gains power for the number of traits that there are on the field. And it would become absolutely massive if that card was on the field.
That's great.
So yeah.
But there is flavor talking about like a card in recent meta that's both super flavorful and super useful. I feel like is a little like tricky. I don't know.
Well,
or I guess there's not an obvious example that comes to mind.
But so if you've played it, if you follow the Hololive sphere, right? The Hololive sphere is, I don't blame you if you don't get all of these inside references because they're literally everywhere. The whole set is full of them, but there's a scene in one of their videos where Aqua forgets who she is.
Oh.
And so she starts calling herself Yamada.
Okay.
And so Yamada, it's the card, it's the Aqua that everybody played.
Yes.
It's the 003500, put a card to clock, draw 2, basically.
Mm.
But what's funny about that is that when they printed Laplace, her key line is YMD, yes, my dark. The Japanese fans use Yamada as the word to represent that. And so, when they printed the card, they just printed a clone of it. It's the exact same card, only yellow. And so it's the tricky little inside stuff for Hololive. If you follow the Hololive, if you're VTubers, you're gonna see tons and tons and tons of flavor in that space. But if you aren't as familiar with Hololive, then maybe you won't pick up on that. So that's kind of those type of Easter eggs are kind of nice for the true fans. The casual players won't notice them on the board or won't notice those interactions, but the people who are playing those sets and the people who are huge fans of those sets, they'll pick up on it. I think they'll appreciate it.
And I think it is there. Stuff like Beaufry, there is flavor in the fact that Maple is just 3 of the finishers, and it's just like all of the different forms that she has. Atrocity, Angel being a soul wall, Atrocity being a big burn thing, and then the mecha suit just having a toolbox of both a stock swap and an icy tail. And also in Beaufry, there's a Kanade 1 combo. That's my boy. He's got a spell stash. He's got a book, the Akashic Record. He's got all the spells. So his level 1 combo is on a book. He can search or salvage for an event called Spell Stash. And then you can cast the spells, and you can dig through the deck, and you can keep playing cards.
Yeah, I think that those type of things are perfectly reasonable. And a lot of times when cards go to memory, there's a reason for it. Mm-hmm. the card goes to memory because the character died or because the thing was permanently lost, whatever it was, and the memory is used to represent like the goneness of it. So if you don't think that the game has enough flavor in it, I think I disagree. I think that for a game to be competitive, the mechanics need to be strong, but for a game to be considered an anime game, I think we can never lose too much of that, because that's what makes it such a attractive game to anime fans, is that the amount of flavor in the game is tremendous. So even that 8-door finisher that made top 4, I mean, guess who it's switching between? We have Sasha, and then Sasha's fatal wound. And she's replaced by the fatal wound causer. So
absolutely. People were like, why can't I do this again? It's not like slime. I can do it again with slime. Why can't I do it again? Well,
the thing about fatal wounds is
they tend to be fatal. But that'll be it for today's Refresh Point. Thanks for hopping into our discussion. This will be coming out right before the California tournament, so good luck to all you homies. And that'll be it for today.
Well, I think that we covered all the good stuff about flavor, and we hit the spike corner, and we got through, a good discussion of what's good about old sets getting a few new pieces.
So, having shuffled up your deck, take your refresh point, go on to the next deck. Have a very nice day.